with the latest incident taking place yesterday in Umoja, where a woman is reported to have stabbed her husband to death. This comes barely a week after a 24-year-old mother in Kayole killed her two children in a domestic feud turned tragic before attempting suicide. Now, data by the National Council on Administration of Justice also shows there have been a spike in sexual offences in the last 2 weeks of March, with offences constituting 35.8% of all criminal matters reported within that window. So it is definite. Kenya has reported a surge in the case of domestic violence, gender-based violence. And we just want to take a look at this particular pertinent issue, delve deeper. My guest in studio, John Wills Njoroge, who's the co-founder of Lead Global Impact, will help us go through. Thank you so much for making time, John. We have a case where, let's look at it this way, the very measures taken to protect populations right now to keep health systems afloat and are leaving women and girls who are especially vulnerable to gender-based violence. Now, we have a case of we're isolated from resources and those who can actually help them while they're in a worse position. How bad is this, especially since, you can't distance yourself from your abuser when you're under lockdown?
True. It is sad that we are experiencing this. And as we all know, it is a result of social disruption that happened as a result of curfew, cessation, and all these things. Simply because we are not, as a society, we are not used to spending a lot of time together. And when people spend a lot of time together, you get to see the good side of this person and the bad side of this person. And it's not even helping to actually know that some of these families, people have lost their jobs. Others, they don't have enough meals. And children are at home. So we have come to a place where we are meeting ourselves. And some of the challenges that we're experiencing are simply social challenges. Yeah.
Well, that's definitely true. But when we notice a surge in gender-based violence, I mean, it raises issues about how we actually approach these issues, you know? Because recently, I think approaching this problem with a top-down approach will not be enough, because we need preventive and mitigation measures in the face of this particular pandemic. But how do we do this is the question, when independent, groups and meetings among women and men in, in the local setting that actually help stamp gender-based violence are not meeting up?
Yes, there's a group that is committed to address these issues, and that group is Tunawiri. They are planning to come up with a campaign to help address some of these issues from the grassroots. And the other thing is that we need to realize that the family unit is, the nation is as good as its family units within. And so one of the ways that we need to address this is first appreciating each other and acknowledging that we have a problem. People are stressed. Women and children, I can honestly say to a certain level they're disadvantaged because they are vulnerable. And some of the challenges that we face today, they are not only economic challenges, they're social challenges. And the other thing is that most of us, we got in these relationships not knowing the purpose for these relationships. And I find it interesting that we don't spend a lot of time investing in equipping people for marriage and to live together as we invest when we are starting a business. You go to school for 4 years. But we don't spend a lot of time investing in this. And one of the things that we're also doing as Lead Global Impact is to help men understand their role in this crisis. And that is ensuring that women and children, they are protected, and also creating an avenue where men can have these conversations and also women can have these conversations.
All right. Now, it's definitely a social problem. But when we look at the surge of the numbers, especially right now, might this warrant the need of, protective services against gender-based violence, especially classified as essential during times of a pandemic?
Yeah, sure. And that is very, very important, whereby we need the intervention of non-governmental organizations. We also need intervention of the government and also spiritual leaders to speak about these things, as well as paying more attention on how we are going to protect children, because children are observing this cycle and some of the challenges that are happening. And we also need to recall that what we're experiencing now is something that was invested in the past, because we are products of our history and the experiences that we've been in life. And so these are times whereby we need to come together, and it is not even helping that some of our neighborhoods, we don't talk to each other. And so raising some of these issues becomes a challenge, but we need to talk about it.
Definitely, and it has far-reaching consequences,
True.
even past the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's take a look at what's happening around the world. It's not just Kenya that is recording a spike in gender-based violence. I mean, some countries in Europe, across the world, including Italy, are also recording that. But we have cases where helplines, that are used to contact, in case of emergency, are recording less cases of people calling in. Is this worrying, or is this a good thing? Considering that you might be home with your abuser, you might not be necessarily the space to give call or get help. How exactly should we look at this?
It is very interesting because, and it was also very sad that there are people who are stuck in a place where it is worse than a jail, and they are punished every day. And there are different types of abuse, because there are those who are not abused physically, but they are abused emotionally by their partners. And that has far-reaching effect, because what happens is that when this person is abused, they let it out, they project it to their children. And as a result of that, even as people work from home, it is not helping because they are not productive, and so people end up losing their jobs. And so we need centers, and I know that Tunawiri is pushing that, whereby we can have centers where we have helpline, and we also have deliberate interventions where this is given a priority in our society by the authorities, to make sure that we have child protection and safeguarding in this process, as well as equipping women. And what I would encourage us to do, because people are also not doing so well financially. If you have knowledge and if you have a skill to support women and children, let us try as much as we can to provide an avenue for them to have this conversation.
Okay, let's go down to the family setting as we conclude. And I mean, it's good to state facts. We might be looking at families facing challenges in terms of finances, and we know the stress levels that will definitely come with that. When we're looking at the societal impact of gender-based violence, and whatever we are going through right now, how exactly can we cushion the future generation? Because honestly, we need to break the chain, right?
Yes, we do. And that is very, very important, breaking the chain. And what we need to do is that we can only advance to the level of the knowledge that we have. And no one can rise above the information that they have. And so breaking this cycle, number one, we need to stop it. As men, we need to acknowledge the role of women in the society, and women recognizing the role of men in the society. Then the last thing is ensuring that we have an understanding that children around us and the young people around us are a statement of hope for the future to come. And so anything that we do now will affect the future. And I think it is selfish for us to be displaying or modeling something that is contrary to what life is all about. And I think it is the high time that men and women embrace each other. But even life after COVID, there is need to have psychological support to address some of these issues. Yeah.
This just popped up. We're living in a patriarchal society. So this definitely poses a challenge as well in terms of the mindset and how most people value the need for women and what they actually do. So changing a mindset is definitely one thing we definitely need to look at. Yeah.
True. And that is very important. And you know, it is very, very interesting that even as men, we forget we came from the womb, and we end up abusing the same women who nurture the future. And so it is the high time, as men, we offer leadership, and it is sacrificial leadership, to ensure that women are empowered and supporting the empowerment of women, because women and children prosper to the level of the sacrifices that men actually encourage in a society. Because if we don't encourage these sacrifices, what happens is that we end up abusing women. And it is the high time that we encourage social cohesion and also harmony in families and in our society.
All right, many thanks, John Wills Joroge, who is the co-founder of Lead Global Impact, just helping us take a look at this current challenge. You know, we're living in a different time, and it might pose different disruptions, including the family setting, and this might in hand lead to the increase in gender-based violence. So definitely, even as we were celebrating Mother's Day yesterday, remember to uphold the status of women in society. Well, that brings us to the end of that particular conversation. Let's take a look at what's happening elsewhere. The construction of the National Data Center, Phase 1, containerized at the Konza Technopolis, is ready for use. Speaking while inspecting the progress of Konza Technopolis, the CS of ICT and Innovation, Joe Musheru, said with the milestones made, the data center is expected to support immediate government requirements, business enterprises, and provide environment for implementing and piloting initial smart city services.
The whole country is now fully aware of why we need technology. We're doing all these video conferencing conversations, you know, people are working from their homes. We need to have all the right connectivity. One of the challenges a country would face is that some of the applications that are being used, they are hosted outside of the country, which means we have to pay for international bandwidth, and if there's a problem with that cable, then the whole country can go off. So one great, I would say, advantage we now have is that the data center that we've been building already now, we had started with a temporary one, which is now ready for use. That will allow us within the next week to actually have our locally hosted video conferencing platform that every Kenyan can actually now use. The cost of using that in terms of internet bandwidth and so on will actually be much lower. The reliability, the security, and all that will be managed here.
All right, we'll definitely bring you up to speed with more developments even as they happen. We want to take a break right now on News Center, but do stay with KTN News. We'll be back at the top of the hour at 10 a.m. with more on the latest. I'm sure you want to know how the U.S. and other countries are preparing for the post-COVID-19 times. Just stay with us. Good morning.
This is KTN News.